Thank you, speakers, for the wonderful session. Now we move on to the instruction course 5. I request Dr. Deepika to take over the session.
Yeah, hi Deepti. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Clear? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Deepti. Thanks for the introduction. Thank you, TOS, for providing this opportunity to have this instruction course. I'll just share my slides and quickly we can begin. Yeah, so we will be having instruction course on electroretinogram, which is we want to make it more easy for better understanding. So we'll be covering on the basics and its clinical applications in brief. We have kept the talk very brief so that each part of the segment will be covered. So we, along with me, there are three more co-instructors, Dr. David, Dr. Hardik, and Dr. Nitin. Each of us will be covering specific aspects. So I, Deepika, will be covering on the cellular concepts behind ERG and prerequisites for ERG. So the first ERG was recorded in frog eyes by the physicist Professor Fritjof Holmgren in 1870. But the birth of human ERG was in 1877 by the physicist Dever. In 1933, Ragnar Granit published a more detailed study of the components of the cat ERG, and for his work on the ERG, he won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1967. So what is ERG? It is basically a visual electrophysiological test. It measures the change in resting potential of the eye induced by a flash of light whenever a light is thrown into the eye, resulting in a biphasic waveform, which is recorded using electrodes. In general, what happens is when the retinal function deteriorates, the light-induced electrical activity in retina also reduces. So that's how we correlate the light stimulus which is thrown, the function of the retina, and its transmission into the optic nerve and brain. Coming to physiology of ERG, whenever a light is thrown on the retina, there will be two things which happen. One is hyperpolarization of the photoreceptors and photoisomerization of the rhodopsin. So after this, the signals will be transmitted to both bipolar cells and ganglion cell. So the transmitted message from bipolar cell to the ganglion cell is sent to the optic nerve and brain. So further signals are recorded in that way. So these are the cell structures which are responsible for the basic waveforms which we see in the ERG. The main components are the A wave and B wave. So if you can see here, A wave is contributed by both rods and cones, and each part of the A wave will have will be coming from a different part of the photoreceptor itself. That is rod. In the rod, both outer and inner segments contribute, as well as in the cone, both outer and inner segment contributes. So basically, A wave is produced from the photoreceptors, rod and cones. B wave, will be produced by bipolar cells, along with a few little contribution from rod sperules and also the cone pedicle. After the B wave, there is a C wave, which will be contributed from the RPE. Direction matters. That means the orientation of the cells in the retinal layers is very important. The major contribution to the ERG waves is by radially arranged cells. These are photoreceptors, bipolar cells, molar cells, and retinal pigment epithelial cells. So the minority of the waveforms are contributed by the laterally or irregularly arranged cells, which are horizontal cells and amacrine cells. So how to perform ERG? I'll be telling about the prerequisites for performing an ERG. So it requires, the instrumentation has three major things. First is electrodes, second light source, third is signal amplifier and monitor. We'll describe each one separately. In the electrodes, there are three types which are required, which is called active electrodes, reference electrode, and ground electrode. In the active electrode itself, the electrode can be contact or non-contact. The second part is light source, and third is signal amplifier and monitor. So if you see the picture over here, the patient is sitting with the electrodes, one active, reference, and ground, which is not seen in this picture. And this will be the patient, if you see this picture, the patient is stimulated by the light source connected with the electrodes, and the signals will be transmitted to this amplifier and monitor. So these are the three important components for the ERG. So individually describing each electrode. So the active electrodes can be corneal contact lenses or the non-contact electrodes. In the corneal contact lens, it is a transparent with large optic opening, but the disadvantage of this is frequent repositioning, discomfort to the patient, and it is quite a little bit more expensive. In the non-contact electrodes, there will be contact with either lower cornea or bulbar conjunctiva. Examples are gold foil, DTL fiber, Zari electrodes. So the major difference between this is in the contact electrodes, the placement will be in the cornea or in the bulbar conjunctiva. In the non-contact electrodes, it will be on the lower lid, mainly the fornix. The amplitudes which are obtained by contact electrodes are high, and in the non-contact electrodes, they are little low. Topical anesthesia is required for the contact one, whereas the non-contact, it is not needed. Centrally, there will be a transparent optical opening in the contact electrodes, and a speculum-like design is made to keep the lids away. So that was about the active electrode. There two more important electrodes are reference electrode and ground electrode. So the reference electrode will be connected to negative input of the recording system. Bipolar electrodes are more stable when compared to the unipolar. The location of the reference electrode in the eyes are along with the contact electrode. Near each orbital rim, temporal to the eye, are used as the reference electrode for the corresponding electrode. So we should always avoid placing over a muscle mass, as it may mask the response. It causes a lot of impedance. So the ground electrode will be kept on forehead, earlobe, or mastoid, and it is connected to the common output of the recording system. So these are the few electrodes, the pictures which are there. The first one over here is the DTL, then LVP Zari electrode is there. These are the corneal electrodes, the Burian line, jet electrodes. These are ear clip electrodes. This is an example of gold foil electrodes. So the right way to do is how we place the electrode is very important. Dead cells and grease should be removed from placing electrodes over skin using abrasive paste and placing a conductive gel in between the electrode and skin. There are some tips for cleaning the electrodes, which is electrodes are the main component of the ERG. So how we place it and where we place it is very important for the proper recording of the ERG. A few tips for cleaning the electrodes are don't let tears dry on the electrode. Second one, clean with 50-50 mixture of liquid mild detergent or distilled water. Do not soak electrodes in acidic hard water or which causes electrolysis between the solder. So tips for disinfecting the electrodes in a lab are used in disinfectants such as Sidax OPA, that is orthothaldehyde, and also can disinfect using 1:10 dilution of sodium hypochlorite for no longer than 5 minutes. It should not be kept more than 5 minutes. So the light source, the second important component is the light source. Here we are seeing a Ganzfeld stimulator, which is a dome shaped, and it produces uniform luminance over the entire visual fields. So this whole plate will be illuminated with the light. So based on how we provide the stimulus, and also based on type of the stimulus, and based on where we are stimulating the retina, whether it is focal or it is the entire retina which is stimulated, there are various types of ERG which is called. So based on the stimulus zone, that means where exactly the retina is stimulated, we have full field ERG, which is most commonly performed type of ERG. The other one is focal or multifocal, wherein only specific area in the retina is stimulated. For example, multifocal ERG, where only macula is stimulated, or any other parts beyond the retinal arcades is stimulated. So the next is based on type of stimulus. The type of stimulus is the light which is thrown to the patient. So this can vary depending on the light, how the light is thrown. So it can be either as a single flash or a flicker flash in between. The flash is on, off, flash is on, off. So flicker flash, red flash, blue filter ERG, and a pattern ERG. We will cover pattern ERG in the next subsequent talks also. And based on state of retinal adaptation, we'll have scotopic ERG, where mainly in the dark adaptation time, photopeak ERG, and the mesopeak ERG. In the next segment, we will be learning on how a normal ERG looks, followed by different protocols which will be which are required for performing ERG. So I'll just invite now Dr. David, who will be talking on the normal waveforms and also different protocols. Just a second.
Hello everyone, I'm audible. Hello.
Yes, doctor, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations to Lingam Ophthalmological Society for the 6th annual virtual conference. I'm Dr. David Agarwal. I am Vitro Retina Fellow at LV Prasad Eye Institute at CAR Campus, Hyderabad. As already Dr. Deepika talked about the cellular concepts behind the ERG and what is the various equipments and what is the physiology behind the ERG. So now I will talk about the how to perform an ERG and about its different protocols and how to interpret a normal ERG and what are its different waveforms. So first we will start with the normal waveforms. An ERG mainly has 4 waves and which are A, B, C, and D waves, but mainly we see only 2 waves, A and B wave. So we will start with the A wave. First, A wave is the first negative wave of ERG, and each wave is presented in the dark adapted and light adapted ERG. So in A wave, it is a first negative wave, and the source of A wave is photoreceptors, and it is usually broad trough, as we can see in this figure. It's broad trough in dark adapted response, while it has a sharp trough in the light adapted response. Now the next one is B wave. Source of V wave is the on bipolar cells, and broad response V wave is the slowly rising, like we can see in this figure, and the in light adapted response, it is the sharp and rapidly rising V wave. Now the oscillatory potentials. Oscillatory potentials are actually, they are high frequency but low amplitudes 4 to 6 wavelets. They are seen usually riding on the ascending limb of the V wave. We can see in this previous slide figure that these are the oscillatory potentials. The source of the oscillatory potentials is amacrine cells, and also it denotes the activity of ganglion cells. Now the C wave. C wave is the rare wave. It doesn't see actually present in normal ERG. It seems due to the reduction of subretinal potassium levels. And similarly, D wave, it is also a rare wave. It's a positive wave, which usually occurs when the stimulus duration is prolonged. It occurs only in photopic ERG, and the source behind the D wave is the off bipolar cells. Now, flicker responses, they are usually cone pathway driven responses. And in light adapted 3.0 flicker, we ignore the first responses because they are from the light adapted rods. Now we will talk about what are various protocols and measurements in a full field ERG. First, what are the prerequisites? 2 main prerequisites are first one is the maximum pupillary dilatation, and second one is the electrode placement and their stability. Dark adaptation for at least 20 minutes is required before starting the dark adaptation ERG, and the electrodes should be placed under dim red illumination. The patient chin is placed comfortably on the chin rest in the Ganzfeld bowl and are asked to focus on the fixation targets. Fixation lights also should not be interfere with the dark adaptation lights, so the fixation lights may be dim red light. And in case of light adaptation, 10-minute period is recommended minimum. Now, there are mainly 2 things to measure in any wave. First one is the amplitude, and another one is the implicit time. For amplitude, A wave we measure from the baseline to the trough, while B wave it measures it from the trough of the A wave to the peak of the B wave. While we measure peak times from starting of the test to the trough of the A wave, and from starting for B wave from starting of the test to the B wave's peak. Now let us decode the nomenclature for the test protocols. We will understand it by an example. For example, if it is written that waveform is from DA 3.0 ERG, it means DA means it is dark adapted ERG. For light adapted ERG, usually it is written that LA. 3.0 means it is the response to the 3.0 candela second per meter square. That is the stimulus intensity. This 3.0 candela second per meter square, it is the photopic strength. If we have to calculate the scotopic strength for the same protocol, we have to multiply it by 2.5. That is, the scotopic strength for this protocol will be 7.5 candela second per meter square. Now, these are the 6 main protocols which are used in single flash full field ERG. First one is the scotopic 0.01 ERG. The minimum interval between the flashes in it is 2 seconds. Next one is scotopic 3.0 ERG. The minimum interval between the flashes is 10 seconds. Third one is the scotopic 10 or 30 ERG. It is a bright flashlight test in which minimum interval between flashes is 20 seconds. Last scotopic test is scotopic 3.0 oscillatory potentials, where the minimum interval between flashes is 10 seconds. Now there are two photopic ERG protocols. First one is the photopic 3.0, in which the minimum interval is 0.05 second. And the next one is the flicker test. It is a minimum of 30 stimuli per second were given in this test. Now in this slide, there are the various stimulus strengths were discussed. Like for first protocol, if the photopic strength we can see from their name, like in this, the photopic strength is 0.01 candela second per meter square. And as I earlier told, we can calculate scotopic strength by multiplying with the factor 2.5. Now let us discuss each protocol by one. First, dark adapted 0.01. It is a rod specific protocol in which the minimum interval between the stimulus flash is 2 seconds, and it consists only of V wave. There is no A wave. It arises from the bipolar cells from the inner nuclear layer. It measures a rod system dysfunction only, but it cannot differentiate between the photoreceptor dysfunction or inner retinal dysfunction. So it measures only rod system sensitivity. Next one is dark adapted 3.0. It is a mixed rod cone response. Minimum interval between the flashes is 10 seconds. It consists both A wave and B wave. Usually A wave has 2 peaks in it and either may be prominent. And it can differentiate between the photoreceptor or the inner retinal dysfunction. The next one is dark adapted 10.0 or 30.0 ERG test, in which the minimum interval between flashes is 20 seconds. Here the A wave denotes dysfunction either at photoreceptor or inner retinal level. So the reduced dark adapted 0.01 response, that is the first protocol, with the reduction of A wave in this protocol, it indicates a photoreceptor dysfunction. While if A wave amplitude is normal or subnormal with the B wave amplitude is lower than the A wave, then it is called the electronegative ERG, which denotes the inner retinal level dysfunction. Now next one is the oscillatory potentials. The minimum interval between the flashes is 10 seconds. 3 to 6 wavelets seen on the ascending limb of the B wave, and as I told, they denotes the activity of amacrine cells or the ganglion cells. They have very limited diagnostic value in clinically. They reduce usually in retinal ischemic states, or they can helpful in the differentiating the type of conjunctival stationary night blindness. Now the next protocol is light adapted, that is the 3.0. Minimum interval between the flashes is 0.5 seconds, and localization of the cone system dysfunction we can calculate from this protocol. Here A wave denotes the cone photoreceptors and off bipolar cell activity, this one, and V wave arises in on and off bipolar cells. It is helpful in localization of the cone system dysfunction. Next one is light adapted 3.0 flicker test, in which I told minimum 30 stimuli per second we have to give, and it is a more sensitive measure of the cone system dysfunction than the previous protocol, but it allows no anatomical specificity that we can't tell where is the defect. Now there is a difference between the waveforms in photopic and scotopic ERG. In photopic ERG, they have lower amplitude and shorter implicit time as compared to scotopic ERG. In photopic ERG, only the cones will contribute, while in scotopic ERG, cones and rods both are contributing. Now to summarize, in the end, ERG, it measures the change in resting potential of the eye induced by a bright flash of light. It should measure after the ensuric pupillary dilatation and electrode stability. ERG is contributed majorly by radially arranged cells of retina, as told by Dr. Deepika, and standard waveforms has A wave, V wave, and oscillatory potentials. And various causes exist for abnormal ERG waveforms and helps in diagnosing and prognosticating after clinical correlation. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I'll be inviting Dr. Hardik, who will be telling us the clinical applications of ERG in normal as well as in abnormal scenarios.
Deepika, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible and clear. You can go ahead with the talk, Dr. Hardik.
Thank you. So, very good afternoon, everyone. So today we will be discussing ERG, and till now we have seen that Dr. Deepika has covered cellular concept behind the ERG, prerequisites for ERG. Dr. David very nicely have shown how to perform and different protocols regarding it and interpretation. And myself, Dr. Hardik Giri, I am a Vitretina Fellow at LV Prasad Eye Institute, Hyderabad. I will be discussing about the clinical indications of ERG in our routine practice and abnormal ERG and clinical scenarios. So I think majority of the part is made easy by Dr. Deepika and David, so it will be easy for us to understand further. So whenever an electroretinogram comes to us or in our hand, either in a clinics or in an exam, we should always look for the 5 things. We should directly not jump onto the graphs and start interpreting it. First, always see the demographic and recording details, whether the graph is of the same person which you want to examine, and see that the pattern is as expected by you. Is it reliable? And look for the artifacts. And then see the individual responses, amplitude and implicit time. And then finally, the electrophysiological remarks should be made. The causes of variation in ERG can be physiological, which is either age-related or because of gender, uveitic pigmentation, dilatation of the pupil, or refractive error. It can be because of technical errors, and it can be pathological or the retinal diseases, which we will see today. So how the ERG help in our routine practice is that it aids in the diagnosis of stationary or progressive inherited retinal degeneration. It helps to assess the patient with retinal toxicity due to metallosis, and it helps to assess the retinal toxicity to the medications. Today we will discuss about the full field ERG, and always keep in mind that whenever the at least 25 to 30% of the retina will get involved, then only the full field ERG will show abnormalities. Otherwise, the full field ERG may come as a normal. We have very routinely seen that in pediatric ophthalmology, the child are being advised for ERG examination, and the common indications for the pediatric patient is nystagmus, decrease in a vision in normal looking fundus, and sensorineural deafness. So this normal fundus examination where the child's vision is limited visual acuity, the causes can be Leber's congenital amaurosis, achromatopsia, congenital stationary night blindness, and road-cone dystrophy. Based on the full field ERG, 3 categories of diagnosis can be made: cone-rod dystrophy, road-cone dystrophy, and inner retinal dysfunction. Today we will see all 3 varieties. First, let's start with the inner retinal dysfunction. This is the disease that spares the photoreceptor function, and as the name suggests, it affects only the inner retinal layers, especially the bipolar cells. In this condition, the A wave amplitude will be normal and the B wave amplitude will be reduced or it can be absent, which is called as a negative ERG. It will be visible like this, where an A wave is present, but the B wave is either reduced in amplitude or it can be absent depending upon the severity. It can occur in inherited conditions like congenital stationary night blindness, X-linked retinoschisis. It can be seen in central retinal artery occlusion or central retinal vein occlusion, and more prominent in an ischemic variant of CRVO. It can be seen in a Birdshot chorioretinopathy or even lipid pigment disorders like a Batten disease or a melanoma associated retinopathy. The A wave is formed because of the photoreceptors and which are not involved here. So the A wave is nicely visible and the inner retinal layers will produce the B wave, and those are affected. That's why the B wave is disturbed here. When we see a flat line like this is extinguished, the extinguished ERG, it will define when the amplitude of wave is less than 10 milliwatt. It can be seen in cases like advanced retinitis pigmentosa, total retinal detachment, choroidermia, Leber's congenital amaurosis, ophthalmic artery occlusion, or retinal aplasia when both the inner and outer retinal layers are affected. Now let's see a road cone and cone rod dystrophy. So in a road cone dystrophy, we all know that the rods are predominantly affected. So rods have a more function in a scotopic vision. So, and this should be affected here. Let's start seeing it is. This is this scotopic 0.01 ERG, which is a road specific, which is showing the extinguished wave formation. This scotopic 3.0 ERG is showing a reduced amplitude of A wave and very reduced amplitude of B wave there. In a scotopic 3.0, oscillatory potential is showing very almost extinguished, very minimal wave formation we are able to see. In photopic ERG, A wave and B wave formation is visible both in normal and flicker form. So it is suggesting that the cone function is still preserved, but the rod function is affected. This is the ERG of cone rod dystrophy, where in this scotopic 0.01 rod specific, we are able to see a reduced amplitude of B wave. In scotopic 3.0 ERG, reduced amplitude B wave is seen. Oscillatory potential, the wave front is very disorganized. Photopic ERG is almost distinguished. So which is suggesting that the cone function is more damaged than the rod function. Even the rod function is also reduced, but is some preserved in comparison to the cone function. This is a case of retinitis pigmentosa, whereas photopic ERG 0.01 rod specific is showing reduced amplitude of B wave. The scotopic oscillatory scotopic 3.0 and oscillatory potentials are also disturbed, even there is not following any particular pattern. As we have already seen that we have to also look for a pattern which is following or not. The photopic response are also disturbed, which is not following any particular pattern. The flicker response is showing reduced amplitude. So here both the photopic and scotopic graphs are disturbed. Even ERG has a very important role in central retinal vein occlusion. It has a high specificity and sensitivity in differentiating ischemic from a non-ischemic CR view. Here we can see that B wave amplitude is reduced, and when a B by A ratio is less than 1, then it is a highly suggestive of ischemic variant. Ophthalmic artery occlusion can extinguish both the A wave and B wave, as we know that in such condition both the inner and outer retina will be affected, and that's why the A wave, both the waves are extinguished. While in CRAO and CRVO usually produce the amplitude attenuation of a full field ERG, which is reflecting the degree of ischemia. Now let's see some of the case scenarios. This is a 30-year-old male who presented to us with a diminution of vision in both the eyes since last 1 year. His base corrected visual acuity in both the eyes were 20 by 125. This is the color fundus photograph. We are able to see multiple retinal flags which are more prominently seen on the posterior pole. The pigmentary changes at the macula or beaten bronze appearance is visible. And I think most of us have already made the diagnosis that it's a Stargardt disease. So yes, this is the fundus autofluorescence image, which is in which the flecks are more prominently visible, which are hyper autofluorescence, and macula is showing mottled hypo autofluorescence. This is the OCT image of the same patient, which is showing the foveal thinning, and we are able to see here that the photoreceptor loss is there. Some amount of photoreceptor loss is there. This is the ERG image of that patient. The first two graphs are of the right eye, lower two graphs are of the left eye. This scotopic image is rod specific, is showing normal amplitude A and B wave. Scotopic 3.0 is also showing the normal amplitude of A and B wave. While in the photopic ERG, we are able to see that A and B wave are also present. So this is showing the ERG with a normal scotopic and photopic amplitude. Now let's see another case, which is of a 23-year-old gentleman who has a diminution of vision since childhood. His right eye visual acuity is 20/60 and left eye is 20/125. Here the flecks are more in number in comparison to the previous case which we have seen. The fovea which we are able to see here is showing almost 2 to 3 disc diameter of hypoautofluorescence. On OCT image right eye there is a foveal thinning with a photoreceptor loss. In left eye there is a small full thickness retinal tissue defect in the center and photoreceptor loss is there. And this is the ERG of the same patient, where in the photopic 0.01 ERG we are able to see normal A and B wave. Even photopic 3.0 and oscillatory potentials are also seems to be normal only. But in the photopic 3.0 ERG we are seeing that A wave amplitude is reduced and B wave amplitude hardly reaching to the midline. And in the flicker 3.0 photopic flicker, the B wave amplitude is significantly reduced. So here the normal photopic and reduced photopic amplitude is seen. Let's see our last case, which is of a 23-year-old gentleman who presented to us with a visual acuity of 20/250 in right eye and 20/200 in the left eye. This is the first time when he is getting his ophthalmic examination done. His sister was been diagnosed as a Stargardt disease, and on fundus autofluorescence we are able to see that there are multiple retinal flecks present till the periphery and around 3 to 4 disc diameter of hypoautofluorescence, and prominent we are able to see peripapillary atrophy in this case. And this is the OCT image showing the significant foveal thinning, and if you see carefully, the photoreceptors loss is not just limited to the fovea, but it is also not present in the far from the fovea in other macular area also. And this is the ERG of the patient. And on scotopic graphs, they are not following any pattern. These are totally disturbed. And even photopic response are also very reduced in amplitude. In this image, we are able to see that in both the eyes, photopic and scotopic ERG amplitude are reduced. So basically, the reason behind why I have shown these 3 cases that on based of ERG, there are 3 types of Stargardt diseases are there. In type 1, when both these photopic and scotopic ERG will be normal on full field ERG. In type 2, where a scotopic will be normal, but photopic amplitude will be reduced. And type 3, where both of them will be reduced. But if we have done the pattern ERG, then in type 1 case, where both the scotopic and photopic amplitude are reduced, this will not be in a same in the pattern ERG. The pattern ERG will be disturbed in such cases. So thank you for your kind listening. And I would like to thank Telangana Ophthalmic Society to allowing me to present my presentation here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Hardik. You've well covered the normal forms of ERG and also the abnormal, with related to all the clinical images. And now we can move on to our next co-instructor, Dr. Nitin, who will be telling us about indications of pattern and multifocal ERG and their clinical applications with few of the examples.
Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to Telangana Ophthalmic Conference 2021. Today, I'll be presenting pattern and multifocal ERG. So, before me, the cellular concepts, the different types of protocols and abnormal ERGs were well covered by Dr. Deepika, David, and Dr. Hardik. And I'll be dwelling more into the pattern and multifocal ERG. So moving on to my presentation, pattern ERG is a non-invasive, objective and quantitative measurement of the central retinal function. So it basically tests the retinal response to a pattern reversing black and white checkered board pattern. So pattern ERG assesses both macular and retinal ganglion cell electrical activity and also helps differentiate between diseases of macula and optic nerve dysfunction. Pattern ERG waveforms are different types. It has an initial negative wave, which is seen at 35 milliseconds, which is followed by a positive wave, which is seen at 50 milliseconds, which is in turn followed by a large negative wave, which is seen at 95 milliseconds. So the P50, the initial positive wave, it represents mainly the outer retinal function, mainly the macular cones. N95, it is a second negative wave. It mainly tests the retinal ganglion cell function. Here you can see the P50 wave, and this is the N95 wave. So amplitude is basically the maximal light-induced electrical response that is generated by various retinal cells. And implicit time is a time taken for the wave to reach its peak. So here the amplitude of the P50 is from the peak of P50 to the trough of N35, and whereas the amplitude of N95 is from the peak of P50 to the trough of N95 wave. So moving on to the indications of a pattern ERG, it is useful in diagnosis and management of optic nerve and macular dysfunction. It is used to monitor retinal diseases associated with toxic drug exposure, and also used to assess inflammatory, compressive, and traumatic lesions. So some of the clinical significance of pattern ERG include, so as I initially mentioned, it is useful to differentiate between optic nerve and macular dysfunction. So N95 amplitude is reduced in optic nerve diseases, and P50 amplitude is reduced in macular dysfunction, because P50 mainly measures the outer retinal function, whereas N95 measures the retinal ganglion cell function. So in Leber hereditary optic neuropathy, there is significant reduction of N95 wave with preservation of P50 wave. In cases of glaucoma, there is a diminished N95 amplitude and prolonged implicit time, whereas the P50 wave is preserved in both glaucoma and glaucoma suspects. In cases of non-arteritic AION, there is a typical N95 amplitude reduction with preservation of P50 wave. In severe cases, there may be reduction of both N95 and P50 wave amplitudes. So this is a case where a patient had bilateral retinitis pigmentosa. So in the autofluorescence, you can see central hypoautofluorescence surrounded by hyperautofluorescence, more so in the left eye when compared to the right eye. So in the ERG, scotopic and photopic ERGs are almost flat, and the pattern ERG is also not recordable, which indicates that more diffuse involvement of the retinitis pigmentosa. So this is another case where the patient had bilateral retinitis pigmentosa. So here more involved in the left eye when compared to the right eye. So here the scotopic and photopic ERGs are almost flat, whereas the pattern ERG is recordable. And here you can see right eye is less involved when compared to the left eye. So this says that there is still preserved central macular function when compared to the periphery. So moving on to the multifocal ERG. The multifocal ERG attempts to measure the spatial distribution of the central retinal cone function. So it is a retinal response to black and white pattern of hexagon elements which are presented in an M sequence. So usually the display contains either 61 or 103 or rarely 241 hexagons. So the spatial resolution will improve with more number of hexagons, but 61 number of hexagons strike a balance between spatial resolution and the time taken for the test to be completed. So this is a multifocal ERG photograph where this is how the alternating array of white and black hexagons are presented to the patients, and these are the focal multifocal ERG responses that are being recorded. This is a waveform. The initial N1 is the negative wave, which is followed by P1, and the next wave is a negative wave. So basically, multifocal ERG is a function of the outer retinal function, mainly the macular cones. So here you can see the 3D depiction of central macular cone function. So in this photograph, you can see there are 5 circles. The first circle is mainly the foveal, which describes the foveal function. Second circle indicates the parafovea. Third circle depicts the perifoveal area. Fourth circle depicts the near periphery, and the fifth circle depicts the mid part of the central part of the mid periphery. So moving on to the indications of multifocal ERG, it is useful in cases of retinitis pigmentosa. So in the initial cases of retinitis pigmentosa, the periphery is more involved when compared to the central part. So the multifocal ERG may be normal or subnormal with flat scotopic and photopic responses in cases of retinitis pigmentosa. It is also useful in hydrochloroquine toxicity. It is useful to prognosticate the disease. In case of Stargardt macular dystrophy, the central and paracentral responses are reduced in multifocal ERG. In case of branched retinal artery occlusion, so the multifocal ERG responses are reduced in the area of the branched retinal artery that is involved. So it is also useful in white dot syndromes like multiple evanescent white dot syndrome. So patient may present with sometimes with photopsias and enlarged blind spot. So in the areas of enlarged blind spot, the multifocal ERG responses may be diminished. So as multiple evanescent white dot syndrome is a self-limiting disease, so the multifocal ERG responses may be reversible after some time. So it is all multifocal ERG is also useful in cases of neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So this is a case of a case scenario which I am going to describe here. So patient presented with decreased vision in both eyes for 5 months. So he was on treatment for rheumatoid arthritis with hydroxychloroquine for past 5 years. The best corrected visual acuity in the right eye was 20/30 and the best corrected visual acuity in the left eye was 20/200. So in the patients with hydrochloroquine toxicity, the initial presentation may be presence of a parafoveal granularity that may be seen. But here in this fundus photograph, you can see involvement of retinal atrophy, which is seen as a bullseye maculopathy in both the eyes, more so in the left eye when compared to right eye. So this is autofluorescence of the same patient, where you can see presence of hypoautofluorescence, which is surrounded by hyperautofluorescence. Same in the left eye, where you can see hypoautofluorescence surrounded by hyperautofluorescence. So it is more involved in the left eye when compared to the right eye. So this is the OCT of the same patient, where you can see there is outer retinal thinning with some amount of photoreceptor loss seen in the right eye, and also in the left eye you can see outer retinal loss that is seen. So this is a multifocal ERG of the same patient, where you can see a flat multifocal ERG responses in the foveal area, parafoveal area, and in the perifoveal area. It is seen in both eyes, but more diminished in the left eye when compared to right eye. So with this background of hydrochloroquine toxicity, now we shall discuss AO recommended guidelines for screening of the patients with hydrochloroquine toxicity. So a baseline fundus examination should be done to rule out any pre-existing maculopathy. So which is followed by annual screening after 5 years for patients on acceptable dose of hydroxychloroquine. So we need to do annual screening with fundus examination, 10-2 Humphreys visual field, and any one of the following, which include multifocal ERG or autofluorescence or spectral domain OCT. So we need to stop the drug as soon as we see any sign of toxicity, and we need to refer the patient to rheumatologist for change of the drug. So apart
Dr.
from
Nathan, we are on time. I think we are out of time. Sorry. You can just sum up in one line. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost done. Yeah. So apart from retinopathy, patients may also have eye features such as corneal deposits, ciliary body dysfunction, and posterior subcapsular cataract may also be seen in patients with hydroxychloroquine toxicity. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nitin. So we cover the ERG, pattern ERG, and multifocal ERG in 4 different aspects. I hope
Ma'am,
are,
we have
okay.
7 minutes for the discussion, ma'am.
Okay. Discussion as in you'll have some question answers, or we can discuss with the co-instructors.
Request, ma'am, can we have the discussion?
Yeah, so discussion as in within the co-instructors, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I was thinking there were any questions, then we should answer that.
You
Nothing
can
like that. Okay, we can start. We can start, right? Yeah, yeah, Dr. Nitin, regarding the multifocal ERG, which you highlighted, the use of the multifocal ERG in HCQ toxicities. So, how often do we have to do the multifocal ERG? And
ma'am, sorry to interrupt. I
yeah.
guess Dr. Nitin and you are connected in the same room. So the voice is echoing. I request one of you to mute the mic, ma'am.
Actually, we are not connected in the same Zoom, actually.
Okay, ma'am, please continue.
Yeah, Dr. Nitin.
Yeah, thanks, Deepika, for the question. So, if the patient is on hydroxychloroquine, so it takes certain, usually according to AO guidelines, after 5 years of acceptable dose of hydroxychloroquine, we need to screen the patients every yearly with either fundus examination is one thing, and we need to do a 10-2 visual field examination. Along with that, we need to do multifocal ERG or autofluorescence or HDOCT. Yearly, we can do that. That would be sufficient, I guess.
Yeah, Dr. Nitin, thanks for that. Also, if there are some changes, it says that most of the times the changes which are seen in the multifocal ERG or due to the HCQ toxicities, they might not reverse on time if the changes become very severe. So that's why the screening with all the investigations which we do is very important for any patients with HCQ, so that the defects are detected early and the drug is stopped or it is switched into an alternative drug.
Okay.
That was one point.
Hello, Dr. Deepika.
Yes, Dr.
So I want to make some points that when we are discussing the full field ERG, so always a ERG when it comes to in our hand, we directly do not see it with a graph interpretation. The normative graph, we have to always compare the age group of that patient and compare it with that and see the reduced amplitude or increased amplitude and then start interpreting it. So when it is not possible that each and every graph one will be remembering, so we have to compare the normative age group data graphs with the patient's graph. And another point is that for a pediatric age group of patients, when we are doing ERG, so it might possible that the child is not cooperative for the examination. So we may take the test under a general anesthesia. So in such condition, the anesthetic drug, it can lead to a change in the amplitude of ERG. So we have to keep that thing in our mind. And usually a normal ERG amplitude will reach by the age of 2 years. But in recently there are some many studies are ongoing where the 6-month-year-old and even 12-month-year-old childs are being studied for the ERGs, and it is not possible that ERG to be done in a normal instrument. So there are handheld ERG machines are available in current days and which are better to examine for the better giving better test results in a child. So just wanted to make that.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Hardik, for those points. They're very important. They're measured in microvolts. That's why many of the factors affect them. So at the same time, they're very sensitive and they're very valuable. So we have to take on both the sides. Yeah. Any other points? I think is it the timer is.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, it's time. Dr.
You still have time if you want to continue your discussion, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can discuss on other aspects. ERG was the dark we discussed each topic in Dr. Nitin and Dr. Hardik. So Dr. David covered on the basic aspects. So in that, the type of stimulus, one can all are muted. Yeah, so it always depends on the adaptive state of the eye, which was shown in different protocols which we follow, whether it is dark adapted, light adapted, and dark adapted 0.01, dark adapted 3, light adapted 3. So in each time, the intensity of the light is different. So we are throwing very minimal light to check the rods. Then we are throwing a very high intense light to check the cones. And when we check the rods at 0.001 ERG, so that is the most specific for rods. So if we want to measure exclusively the rod function, so we have to throw the dimmest light to check its response. So that is very important. That's why whenever we want to see a rod response, whenever we want to see a cone response, or you want to see a combined response, the light which is thrown and the waveform which is coming in that intensity of the light, that has to be checked rather than checking on the whole ERG. So those were the few points which I can add on the second talk. That's all from my side. Right, I think we are on time. So I thank TOS and Deepthi, who's been coordinating well with all the co-instructors. Thank you, TOS, for providing this opportunity. I hope we have made this, it is a little complex topic, I agree, for the ERG, multifocal and pattern ERG. I hope we have made some concepts clear with clinical examples as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hardik. Thank you, Nitin.
Thank you.
I thank all the speakers for the wonderful session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Deepthi. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Before we proceed with the next instruction course, let us wait for 2 minutes. We are awaiting for the chief